Hello everyone, this is Danika Christopherson, Miss Oklahoma USA 2024, and today I am on the Frontier Banter podcast.
Welcome to show number 4. Woo! This is Colonel Derek Baird, and I'm here with...
Command Sergeant Major Bill Pearson, the Fort Sill Garrison CSN.
All right, and I'm the U.S. Army Garrison, Fort Sill, Oklahoma Garrison Commander. And today on the Frontier podcast, we're doing a little something different today. Somebody who's, I would say, tangentially associated with Fort Sill, but born and raised in Lawton, so a true Lawtonite, Lawtonian, Fletcherite, something like that in the area around here. We've got Miss Oklahoma 2024, so the current reigning champion, Miss Danika Christopherson.
Pew, 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 pew.
That's
Hey.
it.
Thank you for having me, Colonel Baird. Really, I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, the great thing about having you here, one, is you're here often with all the things that we do for the garrison, whether it's the coffee with the commander, whether it's a special event, kind of showcasing to soldiers who you are, and the things we're going to talk about today is the things you had to overcome to be the champion, if you will, right? Because it's not the easy thing to do, right? Like everybody sees you on top, it's like a duck in the water. There's all these things that are happening underwater to get you going, and there's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that kind of get you there.
Absolutely.
And then we're also going to talk a little bit today is you're a pretty accomplished business leader with, I think you got a team of about 160-ish people, and we're going to kind of talk a little bit about what the Delta Charlie Code Program, the DCC, yep, so we're going to talk a little bit about that, but really we're going to kind of talk about who is Danika, how did Danika come to be the Miss Oklahoma, and then and some things that why it's important for our military listenership. So, Danika, if you don't mind, just go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah. Well, hello, I'm Danika Christopherson. And like you mentioned, I currently am the Miss Oklahoma USA, but I started this, quote, pageant journey a long time ago. And really, like it or not, sometimes I don't like being put in the box of a pageant girl because I'm not the typical pageant girl when it comes to the things of hair, makeup, and glamour and all those things. But like you said, it takes a lot of hard work. I started this pageant journey back probably when I was 16, so I don't even know what year that was anymore. But I was Miss Oklahoma Teen USA at the time too. And like anybody that achieves a goal, a lot of times when you have a goal and you're super driven towards it, you kind of lose sight of what you're actually doing it for, and then you get it, and you kind of then have a midlife crisis. Maybe that's just a girl thing, I don't know, but I definitely had a midlife crisis when I was 17. So that led me to going back and doing it again, and I found my spot in leadership, and I was able to take care of myself well enough to be able to lead a team of 160, because I'm sure you understand you can't take care of people if you are not taking care of yourself, whether that's
I like that.
physical or mental, emotional. Because if you're about to lose your mind, you can't go teach somebody else how not to lose their mind. So that's kind of where I found all that within the last 4 years. And now here I am, 23, Miss Oklahoma, and placed second runner-up at Miss USA, which is still crazy to even say. So
That's insane, by the way. That's an amazing accomplishment. I mean,
thank you.
You've done a lot of these competitions, and I would imagine, and again, like anybody who's done a competition, whether it's an athletic competition, a mathlete debate, whatever that chess lead, whatever you want to call it, no one is undefeated, right? And so that resiliency, the drive, the purpose, right? Because we talk about this often, and talk about this a lot of people. What the one thing that I think that drives the train is purpose, and then because you mentioned it, how do I get there? Here's my purpose. How does that drive my train? And then what's the physical, mental, and spiritual, with the health and holistic fitness part of it to get me there? And so that's be an interesting journey to hear, like your perspective and your story, and how that kind of unfolded over the past 4 or so years.
Yeah. And it's interesting you say that, because for me, and I think it's different for everybody, like how you manage your stress. But specifically, and you mentioned it in the very beginning, but you see people that achieve something and you feel as though they're so distant from you. and you can't relate to them. And
Yeah.
so you're like, I can never do that, or that couldn't be me. And then you get there and you're like, nothing changed. This is weird, and it really is a weird scenario, because then you have to readjust your mindset because you were looking at the person that came before you and that they did it and they achieved it, and now you're there and now you are the person that you used to idolize or whatever. So for me, how I managed that mindset and that stress was physical. I would run and I would work out, sometimes to the point of crazy. I would run early times in the morning because, as a runner, it takes time.
Yeah.
You can't do 10, 15 miles in an hour, no matter how fast you are. So it takes time. And I would run at early times in the morning and, whatever works for you. But I was kind of the crazy that would run in the dark and listen to these motivational David Goggins podcasts and, scream and shout and be like,
We're David
I'm
Goggins.
a warrior!
We're David Goggins fans.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And really, that, some people call it weird juju and they look at it and they laugh, but, people who are successful are not going to look at that and judge you for it. They're going to look at it and, say, hey, it got you through it, The people doing things you want to achieve are not going to judge you for stuff.
No, I'm with you. It's interesting. So to be successful, you have to be driven.
Absolutely.
Unless you're completely super lucky and you're one of the ones that win the lottery, right? Like the literal lottery, and you get millions of dollars.
Share some with us.
Right. Good
Yeah.
on you. But
donate.
right, exactly. But for most people, what I find interesting is the word ambition. Like I sometimes feel like people take a step back and say, "Well, you're ambitious," or like that's an ambitious plan, or you got a lot of ambition, and people tend to shy away from that. I would say don't. Like if you've got purpose, you've got drive, have a goal, be ambitious, have ambition. It's okay to say you have that. I think sometimes people feel like that's a dirty word. I personally don't. And I think that helps you drive your train for the future. And then what I'd like to, so I'm off my soapbox there, but I'm interested in your perspective. And now you're at the pinnacle, right? You're Miss Oklahoma USA. And then, what are some of the things that you would want to tell the next crop of folks that are coming up through whether it's a pageant or, hey, I see a goal. How do you talk to the next generation leader, the next generation competitor, whatever that looks like? What are some things that now that you've reached that sort of pinnacle, what would you want to say to folks that will help them get there?
It's always the cheesy stuff that works. So I still have to remind myself of this, but it's all about the journey, right? Because the enjoyment's in the journey. As I mentioned before, and I'll probably say it again throughout this podcast, but once you achieve something that you've wanted for so long, you kind of get mind boggled because now you have to readjust. And so if you focus so much on the end goal and don't actually enjoy the journey, then you get there and you don't remember any of it. Because there are things where, when you're focused in on, you have the ambition to get to the end goal, that's all you care about, the trophy. When will I get the trophy? I'm going to get the trophy. And then you think that's going to make your life better, or that's going to, lead you to the next step. When really, if you do have ambition and you are a goal getter, you're just going to want something bigger. So as I'm on the, end of my reign as Miss Oklahoma, just like any overachiever, you're like, what's next? What's going to be bigger? I've already been to Miss USA. How do you get bigger than Miss USA? Well, who knows, and I think having that ambition or even belief in yourself that there is something bigger. Before I competed for Miss Oklahoma last year, I made sure that in my mind I had it set that this was just an addition to my life, not my whole life, which can be a little bit tricky when you are trying to achieve a goal, whether it's a pageant or a marathon or a position in leadership or your job, whatever you're trying to get at. You're the person that makes the role, and like I said, it's always the cheesy things that work, but it's reminding yourself that you are adding to that just as much as it's adding value to you, so that you don't get your sights twisted. And the journey is remembered and enjoyed, and the journey lasts longer than the trophy half the time. So.
As it should, right? And then sometimes I think we find ways that we just pivot too, right? So you get to this pinnacle. So what's another pinnacle I can get to that I never thought I can get there? Yeah. So maybe it's a completely different event. Yeah. Same mindset, but maybe a little bit different way to approach it, right?
So when you started doing you said 17s when you really started doing, so from then to now, what would you say was the hardest part of doing all that? What was your biggest obstacle achieving those goals, and how did you overcome them?
There was a lot.
Well, I'm sure.
Yeah, there's a lot. But I
Like,
mean,
what was the one? Like, I'm sure that I know it wasn't easy. But what would be
Yeah.
the one thing you said, man? That was the one thing that was the hardest for me to cross that
Overcome.
bridge.
Yeah. I think for me, and maybe not the hardest thing, but or not the hardest obstacle to overcome, but the thing I learned the most from it, and that kind of obviously was an obstacle, was not really knowing when to take information and knowing from other people and knowing when not to take it. Because now I'm in an environment where people are like, you should wear that dress, or you're not, thin enough, or you're not strong enough, or you need to fix your hair this way, or you have a gap in your teeth. And it's like, you're 17, right? Putting it into perspective. And just like I'm sure you guys understand, there's going to always be somebody that's going to leave their little comment and their consensus and communicate. And you're like, even as a leader, a business leader, right? You have team members and things, and you're taking in their feedback, but you see the whole picture, And so from the thing that I'd overcome was understanding and being strong within myself that they can't see the whole picture. And if I think that what they're telling me is true and I should change that, great, I'll change it. And if I don't, I can just say, hey, I really appreciate that, and have a great day, because it steers you wrong, and then you start doing things you don't like. You're not yourself.
I just had that conversation with my wife. So hats off to Tamara, the real boss of the Pearson family.
Woo-woo.
So when I was a staff sergeant,
It's a long time ago.
Yeah.
This
so
probably
that was
Don't
10,
age
15
him.
years ago.
she was probably 5.
Listen, he's a young chicken, okay?
You're the old one. I'm young and spry.
Oh my God! I think I beat you in PT this morning. I'm just throwing that out there for the world to hear.
I was mentoring young lieutenants in the back.
Yeah, mentoring.
Yeah, so I'll leave the unit name off. I had a large group of NCOs tell me I was doing the wrong things to get to where I wanted to go, which if you would have talked to Private Pearson and said he was going to be a CSM one day, I would have laughed at you. But looking back, none of them made it past Sergeant First Class, and I made it to Garrison CSM, and hopefully on to other things, who knows. But it's because while I was receiving information, sometimes I knew what my goal was, and I knew what my path should be. So not all information you're going to receive is going to be the good advice.
Yeah. Or even valuable to you.
Yes.
But in their mind, it's the best thing since sliced bread.
It's all about perspective, right? It's your perspective, theirs, and then
Yeah.
what I love what feedback. You said it earlier.
Yeah.
We said feedback is a gift.
Hopefully it's a good one.
That's right. Some gifts are better than others, right? And
Yeah.
it's a gift you can't really give back, because once that feedback is given, you just.
You said that yesterday, and I really like that.
You
I
accept
remember
it
that.
as is, right?
Yeah.
You accept it as is. And like you said, some of it's I appreciate it. But if you look at the grand scheme of life, or the grander scheme, maybe that you take bits and pieces of that feedback, or you just discard it. You said, but somebody just donate to the goodwill feedback. The feedback goodwill, is that such a thing? We're just going to donate to somebody else. What what both of y'all said. So my brother just had his retirement ceremony last week, and he officially retires in June. So he's got. And he'll tell you 32 years, 9 months, 22 days. That's what happens when he retires. It's a long time in the Army. And one of the things I thought was really great, in his speech, was, to all the people who didn't think I was going to make it or put all these obstacles in the way, I have 2 words for you. Everybody's kind of like, oh, you're like, what's it going to be? He's like, thank you. I'm like, that's not the 2 words you wanted to say, bro.
Yeah, no, it's not the ones.
Right? But
use your imagination.
That's right? But it goes back to what you were saying, right? So people put obstacles, people say things, because now, 24-hour news cycle, social media is all around, comments, people think they know better. Someone is a beauty pageant expert and they're really not, or someone's an XYZ expert and they're really not. And you get all this feedback, or people try to throw obstacles in the way. But I like what he said. It's like, hey, thank you. Because Ryan Holiday, it's a great book. Let the obstacle be the way. Let that be the thing that you have to overcome to be really successful. Now, I really appreciate that book, and I appreciate what my brother said, and I appreciate what y'all are saying is, hey, at the end of the day, the feedback is great. Really appreciate it. The obstacles are great because it makes us better as we continue to overcome those challenges. So, and I'll just leave it at that, I think, yeah?
Which in the moment can be really difficult. As I think we all can attest to be like, thank you.
Yeah.
Where your thank you comes from, it's difficult. But especially in the pageant world, because they're judging how you look. But even on the flip side, pageants are a big part of my life for sure, but I know that that's not the most important thing in life. And I think that was another thing, the amount of responsibility I have towards business being at Miss USA. There were days my hair didn't look good or like I didn't like a photo. And I kind of was like, who cares?
Yeah.
Because back home, I've got 160 people that need to be showing up to work, and this person's not coming in because they're sick or their tire's flat and payroll didn't get run and all those kinds of things. So you're at Miss USA and you're like, it really doesn't matter, guys. It's all kind of silly.
Yeah.
And that, like we were kind of talking about before the podcast, some people, like the aggressive yelling to like get out of bed in the morning.
Yeah.
And then there's some people like me that are I'm very type B, surprisingly enough, and I just kind of go with the flow and whatever. And do I actually know what time this podcast was before today? No. I looked this morning because I knew it was today, and I was like, I'll be there at 2:30. Got it.
That's funny.
I knew Chris sent me the address, and so I was like, I'll be fine when I get there.
Yeah, no,
It'll
it's
be good.
good.
That's just how it rolls.
Yeah, and knowing who you are is always a good thing, and then how to improve on it. Kind of like you said, hey, you started this journey at 17. It wasn't the easiest. It's not the easiest journey. You know who you were when you started, and you're a much different person now, I would imagine. I mean, that's not it is not an easy thing to get through. I would wager to say, right?
Yeah.
How do you think?
It's not even the hardest thing in life.
How do you think the pageant world helped you for the business world?
Oh, usually for me, I think about it the other way around. But I think the pageant world showed me more of the marketing side of things, because a lot of things. I was going to touch on this before we change subjects. But even like you're saying with people giving their comments, there are people who think they're an expert but they're not. We're all just trying to make it.
Yeah.
Like, we're all just trying to be somebody, and so when you have somebody that's communicating advice to you, and yes, that might be the best thing to them since sliced bread, but it's not to you, that's okay. But identify that, they care enough about you or they think enough about you to communicate to you.
Yeah.
Whether it's negative or not, right? And so from that perspective, just kind of knowing that and like thinking of other people. It's not about you all the time.
No,
Put
it's
yourself
good.
in their shoes.
Especially if it's well crafted. And I say that because constructive criticism is great.
Mm-hmm.
Being an asshole is not. Those are two wildly different things. But you know what I mean? But but like, hey, Derek, Bill, Danika, hey, this was great, but how about X, Y, Z? And here's a recommended way ahead. And you're like, oh, that's actually pretty good. Or you suck. Those are two wildly different things, right?
Yeah.
And so both of them are feedback. One's a good gift. One you want to donate to the feedback goodwill, right? And give that to somebody else.
Yeah.
To your point, so like, and you got to get, that's what I would offer to folks that are listening, it's the resilience part of it. How do you absorb that? And it's really for the group here. How do you absorb that? Maybe like a constructive criticism that maybe is true and you don't want to hear it, but it's true. And then how do you deal with that? Because that, I think, is often with young people. It doesn't matter what generation. All of us go through it. Mm-hmm. How do you absorb that and how do you deal with it?
I mean, Goggins written books on that.
Yeah.
I know, right?
You're like, go read one.
Go run until you fall.
Yeah, really. But I think time to reflect too.
Yeah.
I used to run obviously in the mornings, and that time when you're a little bit crazy when you don't listen to music on your run or like don't listen to a podcast.
Yeah.
And I think the amount of, like you're saying, the young generation. I mean, I still kind of am considered young, obviously 23, but I learned pretty quick that like stop listening to music. Stop listening to music. Listen to our podcast, but stop listening to podcasts and just stop filling your time with these things that don't add value or matter to you, and stop letting other people live your life. As in, like you're saying, the negativity and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. I heard this on a news podcast one morning, or I don't even know if it was who it was, but people are all trying to be somebody, right? And so when you're talking about careers, the people that are in the news or in that and this, it's like they're trying to do one thing, and that is be successful in whatever business they do.
That's right.
And does that business negatively affect you, as in, are you constantly absorbing music, not really thinking about your life, what you want to do, where you want to go? Are you thinking for yourself, right? Because when you're listening to something, how often do you listen to music and actually think of an idea? I don't know about you, but I cannot do that.
Oh.
I'm like in the song, and I'm like having a good time. I'm not thinking about how I'm going to address the fact that this person said this and what it means to me, and should I accept it? How would it affect my life? And I'm not thinking about that. I'm thinking about the music. So driving, I've stopped just naturally listening to music, and sometimes intentionally, whether I want to or not, but even running, like I'll make myself go on a run and just think, Because what else you're gonna find something to think about,
Oh,
you know, and you're gonna go down this rabbit trail in your mind.
you get inside your own brain pan and just kind of figure it out.
Yeah.
You know that. So I had a book recommended to me recently, and I've read it. Juliet Funt. I'm gonna say that's the Juliet Funt. It's called A Minute to Think. It's exactly. Yeah, it's exactly like you got to carve time out to reflect, or at least think about stuff. Because you remember. You watch these old movies, or you see a picture of somebody with their feet up on the table, they're looking out of their window. It's like the old CEO, and they're just looks like they're sleeping, but they're in their own head.
Yeah.
And we need more of that. Sometimes you got to carve out some time, whether it's on a run, you know, sitting in the shower, you know, on the road, whatever it looks like, and it's just you and you.
Yeah.
Like I say, you like physically you, and then your head.
Well, and to add on to that, thinking and being a leader, first off, requires you to think. And so when you're thinking about a plan or a solution, a lot of times people see that, team members, whomever, and it looks like you're not working.
Yeah.
You know, and so if you get in your head about this thing of like a workhorse mentality that I have to produce, you know, when you're doing physical work, yeah, it's great to move the boxes and get the things done, but like slow down for a minute and look at the boxes. How could we quickly do this? You know, but that's not working to some people, and so it can be hard because you're like, I'm trying to produce and perform and be the best person I can be, you know, and show them that I got it. But really, you're like, slow down and look at
boxes.
Yeah,
So great.
Yeah. So, but I think to wrap up on your question, pageants have taught me how to make things put into a pretty box, in the sense of marketing or conversation, and even being able to have this conversation here. Obviously, it's a little bit more relaxed, but I've also learned how to communicate in a way that's professional and, you know, doing your research and all that kind of stuff before you go meet folks. And it's taught me a lot of the sales/marketing that I do know. And I've been able to use, you know, the business I run now to kind of use that as an avenue every day.
Like, does having to learn how to answer a question in 30 seconds or less helped?
Actually, it has. So my onstage question at Miss USA, you had headphones on, so there's 5 of us on stage in top 5. You're on national television. They teach you, like, you know, looking in the audience, it's all black, but there's red dots, and the red dots is where the camera is. So everybody's kind of freaking out. I knew, it's crazy, like I was telling you, before this, episode 4, my lucky number is 4. I was called into the top 5 as the 4th person. And so at that point, I was like, I'm winning. I'm going to be Miss USA.
Brilliant.
I've got this. So I was like on the coast, right? But we're all standing on stage. It's a huge stage. There's red dots in the audience, and that's where the camera is. And we're on, I think, the CW channel. I already almost forgot. I know I'm on the CW channel. It's really crazy. I'm standing there. We all have these big headphones on. Hopefully my hair doesn't get messed up by the time they take it off, because I can't see. But these girls, 3 girls before me had already answered their question, and I had no idea what it was. We all got asked the same question, so you can obviously see who did better or who didn't do better, because it was the same question. So I finally get up there, and that question, I don't remember all the details of what it was, but essentially it was like, how do you manage, you know, the world is so diverse. I don't know the exact words, but essentially it was saying the world is so diverse. How do you manage, as Miss USA and just as an individual, you know, leading a team of this many people, or leading a group, because as Miss USA, you're a leader and blah, 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 right? Yeah. And, you know, thinking on your toes, I didn't, quote, rehearse that answer and, like, writing it down 5 times and I am a robot, I know the answer. It's not what I did, but I had an opinion based on what I believed. And going into Miss USA, obviously, it was an election year, so I was prepared for whatever they were going to ask me. They've had some pretty...
Play the game.
Yeah, pretty questions in there. But even for that, like, I knew, I was like, I want to be 110% myself. I'm not going to... And like you're saying, play the game, but just enough to not stray away from who I am, right? Yeah. And so that was really fun to me, because who am I? I get to, like, look at myself, reflect, figure out what my thoughts are. And, you know, I think, and I'm sure you guys can understand this because you work with so many different people from different backgrounds. Nobody believes the same thing, right? Even us 3 at this table can disagree on something, but we're all trying to achieve the same mission, essentially, is kind of what I answered. But, and even as Americans, right? Because we're all here in the United States. We're free. We're here because of the work you guys do, because of the work everybody on this base does. So why am I going to be afraid to answer how I believe?
Yeah.
Regardless of the scenario situation. And so to answer your question, you know, it absolutely has helped me, because I've been able to develop opinions at 23, and even in a month from now or 2 days from now, I can look back and be like, I don't agree with that anymore. But that's that's a great thing about being here in America.
Yeah, and you have
You're
the
free,
right. You have the right.
know?
You have the right
You
to.
can
You
change.
have the right to update what you like. Evolve. People
Yeah.
that do evolve or change your opinion. I'm with you. It's interesting. You said like you went in there. You were very organic. Like you went in there and like sort of informal.
Yeah, informal. There it is.
Informal
Count
kind
one.
of guy, right? If we had a,
Everybody take a
if we had
shot
a
every
bourbon,
time he
it'd
says
be a new drinking
informal.
game, right? It's pretty hilarious, by the way. But yeah, so like I've talked to a lot of folks going through different, whether it's an assessment program or going through an interview for a GS or a general service job or a civilian job, is have about 2 or 3 talking points, because regardless of the question, like maybe the question you can provide 1 or 2 of your talking points. And if you know that, like just 3 bullet comments. In fact, if you have a blank sheet of paper in the back of your mind, these are the 3 things I always want to circle back to. Kind of like that way you don't have to worry about what the question is.
Yeah.
You already know how you're going to answer it.
Yeah.
Whatever that question is. And you can always tie it back to the 2 or 3 things that you know. And it's more organic that way, I think.
Yeah.
And I think it makes it. I do all these talks here in Lawton. I get like a little card. I look at it. I write a few things down. I put it in my pocket. And I just
keep moving.
just keep it on, and just keep going. And that's kind of how we do it, because I think it's more organic. And then you have a better feel for what you want to say and how you want to project your perspective or your thought process. So I'm with you. Keep it. Those 2 are more robotic, I think, are more disingenuous.
Yeah.
I think you want to be prepped. You want to be prepped for sure, but be who you are is to be genuine. And if not, causes problems later in life, I think.
Yeah. Well, and leadership is all about influence. And to influence people, you have to understand how they feel about what you're saying.
Oh, yeah.
No matter what it is, right? And so if
Yeah.
you're delivering it robotically and you're so focused on this is what I was supposed to say, you now can't even see the person in front of you to identify whether or not they're jiving with what you're saying.
Yeah.
So,
That's
and
good way
that's
to
a
put
hard
it.
skill to learn, because you're not, first off, no matter what you're doing, but specifically in a beauty pageant, you're being judged on the way you look. So you're solely focused on yourself. You're like, what do I look like? How does my hair look? Oh my God,
I have that
But-
problem every day.
Yeah.
My short hair.
I would give your hair a 6 today. 6
Oh,
out of 10.
yes. It's better than what I normally get as a 4. So I'm good.
But, and you're just so focused in on yourself, and that takes effort to not focus on yourself. So you are taking the effort to therefore not focus on yourself. So it's,
Yeah.
tell me how to do it. I feel like that's harder than rocket science half the time. But
Yeah, I mean, plus when you're out in front of folks. So I remember in college I took a public speaking course, and that was probably one of the most favorite courses I've ever taken. And I'm a tier 1 extrovert. Surprise for everybody, right? But you don't just like being a tier 1 extrovert doesn't mean you're a good speaker. Doesn't mean you're good in public. Just means you just like have a ton of energy and you get it from other people and these other things, right? But I thought the public speaking part of it was great, and I would offer that up to anybody, wherever walk of life you're from. Take a public speaking course. If you want to know how to get yourself out, be comfortable being uncomfortable. I mean, the first time I gave a public speech in front of a class, I was like, and you almost kind of lock up, right?
Yeah.
But it's beneficial, and it kind of goes back to what you're saying. You just got to go out there and do it, and do it more than once and get good at it, right?
yeah.
So.
Well, I think even for you guys, that's an interesting question. I know pageants and the things I've done are definitely high achievements, but real world stuff, you guys are talking to people all day long, and you're having to be an influence and a leader. Would you say you ever get nervous?
Yeah, especially, and what's interesting is cross-generational. So whether you're talking to senior leaders, junior leaders, folks out in Lawton, or just in general, I think what's when you're the face or you're the one that's out there, are you saying something that people don't like? Is something going to say the feedback? Do you have a booger hanging out of your nose? Like these are all real things, right? And then like you said, like at a certain point in time, you got to say to yourself, it doesn't matter. I'm just going to say what
Who cares? Yeah.
right?
Who cares?
And just kind of,
yeah.
It's the, what's that book that's, what's his face? The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck.
Oh, yeah.
That is a great book.
I haven't read that yet.
It's a great
He's got
book.
a couple too. I think The Subtle Art of Different Things.
Yeah, I think so.
Money or something like that.
He's also Max. I forget his name, but he did like a pseudonym author.
Maxwell Gladwell? Max Gladwell?
No, Max Tucker. It was different types of books. But when he was younger, did some some doofy books.
It's one of my wife's favorite movies too, by the way.
Oh,
Really?
it's kind of juvenile, but but his leadership books, as you grow older, you figure out maybe I need to switch my focus.
Yeah.
But that book it's like here's what I thought was really great. It's like you could be Derek Baird, or you can be Bill Pearson, the best sled dog racer in America. But you know what? But that you think you're extraordinary, but really you're average because maybe you suck at math.
Yeah.
And so that just brings you right back to the middle.
Yeah.
And so he's like, hey man, everybody's average. And I was like, oh my God, I'm not average. You're not.
No, I'm not.
He's like,
Yeah.
You're not special. Like, but I am special.
Yeah.
But if you look at the grand scheme of things, right? Like it's all about, you could be really good at a lot of things, but then you're not so good at other things. It just kind of brings you right back to that middle of that bell curve. And as soon as I read that, I'm like, it's brilliant. And maybe I shouldn't care a lot what people say.
For me, it was, when Tamara and I were in Qatar together, I was briefing senior ranking people at a young rank. So I got kind of used to that. Being a CSM, I've done lots of speeches and crazy stuff like that.
Yeah.
But like I said, it was this job where you just show up to an event and you got KSWOs like, hey, we're going to do a quick interview and throw a TV camera in your face.
First time they did that, you should have seen his face.
Oh, really?
that was.
We need to save that one for the
Yeah, I think
commence.
the first time it happened to me was with Colonel P at like the Christmas tree lighting event or something crazy. And then even honestly, it was when I first got here, it was our first like Garrison town hall. Is talking to a group of civilian employees. And it's you got to change your speak because the way I would speak to a group of young E4s and the way I would speak to a group of civilians, you have to learn how to start shifting that.
Yeah.
And it goes into the leadership toolkit. I've always said leadership's kind of like a tool bag.
Yeah.
Where sometimes you need a hammer, sometimes you need a screwdriver, sometimes you need a wrench. You can't just always be the hammer. And that came from growth, from being young Sergeant Pearson to Sergeant Major Pearson has grown exponentially on how I address problems and address different leadership challenges, as we like to call them.
Yeah.
But I would say, I always thought I was a good speaker until I got shoved into this job, and you got to smile and talk
At the same time.
randomly whenever you never. Now I haven't had to do it on live TV and answer how I would solve world hunger that international organizations haven't figured out. But so it's like you said, you always think you're a good speaker, or I'm great at this, and then you're like, oh, I wasn't expecting that one.
Yeah. That was a bad
I probably need to start working on that one.
Yeah. I knew I should have prepped.
But it goes back to having those 2 or 3 talking points, right? That you can always lean on. You may not have to answer the question, but you're going to say something that you want people to know. Is what I.
Cue the informal.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
Cue the
back to knowing
informal.
who you are too. Like originally they would give me, hey, say this stuff.
yeah.
And people like you and I are kind of better at just winging it with some talking points that we can send around.
Yes.
And then we can just go just because that's our personalities. But I'm really bad at like, hey, you got to say these things. So then I turn into
Let me just read
Ron
the paper.
Burgundy trying to don't just
Ron
read the
Burgundy?
teleprompter.
Yeah. that's me
Ron
for
Burgundy?
sure.
Oh, that's pretty great.
What do you think?
Go ahead.
What do you think made you not quit in between each of those though? Because that's hard to teach somebody. How do you teach somebody not to quit? Can you do that?
Yes,
Get the
it's
quit out of it?
experience. It's interesting. So I have an identical twin brother. And I've known him all my life. It's pretty great. But we always discuss what makes a good leader. Is a good leader born, or are they grown? Right, and so a little mix of both sometimes. Like your personality, who you are, can help out. Mm-hmm. But I'm a firm believer it's all about growth, and you got to teach someone how to do it. So the good leaders fail often. And how do you fail? You fail forward. Ideally, you don't make the same mistakes over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. What you do is you make a mistake, you learn from it, you keep getting better and better, make another mistake, and you keep going and going and going. I think it all, and so through that's where I think the teaching part comes into young leaders, young soldiers, young entrepreneurs, young pageant winners, is how just doing it. People are, I read this in a book, I think it was a sci-fi fantasy novel. I'm a big sci-fi fantasy reader. Everybody always says it's the first step that's the hardest. Well, I read a book, it's really great. It's not the first step, it's every step after that. Is the hard, because you can take that step and it's kind of not easy. You're breaking stride, like you're going in there, But the next stride gets even more challenging. Then it's more challenging. Then it's more challenging. And that compounds on itself. And so you either got to teach yourself. Ideally, people like us are teaching our younger generation or peers, even seniors, like how to do that. And so that resilience comes with experience. The only way to do that is to do it. Like, is to just jump in feet first into the deep end of the pool and just say, I'm doing it. But ideally you have someone who mentors you along the way or teaches you how to do it. But I mean, sometimes
even then you can't wait until you have. It's
No.
nice to have a mentor, but you can't wait.
Sure.
Yeah.
No, you got to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it goes back
So
to
finding that like grit in yourself to just do it. And once you identify that it takes, because for me, I'm very much, I don't know if I'm a level 1 extrovert, but I definitely feed off people's energy. So as soon as somebody else is like, hey, so excited, I'm so excited.
match energies, right?
Yeah. And so when somebody's like, oh, that'd be so cool, you should do that. I'm like, yeah, I should do that. I'm going to do it. Versus there are people that I know that don't require anybody to tell them it's cool, but they're achieving all these different things.
Yeah.
So once you identify, I identified that in somebody else. And now I have to watch when I see something I want to do and not wait for somebody else to tell me to do it. So I don't know if that makes any sense, but it's hard because you have to like we said, self-reflect.
Yeah.
And know kind of who you are.
And also you got to know what you can grab for, right?
Yeah.
And it so how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, right? You might not hit the goal right off the bat, but you take little baby steps to get there.
Yeah.
And so for that, like as you're with as an entrepreneur, and then under whether it's being in an entrepreneur world, as a business leader, as a pageant winner, as you go out, what are some techniques that you use that help you? Besides, I mean, we talk running, but what other things that help you with your resilience and then makes you mentally tough to really achieve the goals that you want in life?
Yeah. I think, like I mentioned, I'm very much a physical person. So to get all that like nervous, anxious, frustration, energy out, I have to do something physical. So for me, it's about my routine, and a routine as much as you can have when you're a leader, right? Because you get called at 5 a.m. doesn't really matter. Your schedule is now wrecked.
Yeah.
But I think having a routine and a schedule. So of course we said running, but this is kind of where the Delta Charlie code comes in. Delta Charlie. Military alphabet, right?
Yep.
A mentor of mine, he was in the military, and he, gave me this like nickname for when I was actually really doing good. Because there was a time in my life where I was really struggling, with mental health and all the things, right? Just anxiousness and all of that. Essentially being a victim in my own life. Delta Charlie was like this alter ego that I could like channel in a sense that was like, I'm Delta Charlie, So as I'm running in the middle of the night at like 4 a.m., it's pitch black outside, I'm like screaming, I'm Delta Charlie.
Would you really?
Yeah. So, and David Goggins, I think, actually says
I'm
this
David,
too.
and then I'm Goggins.
Yeah, and then I'm Goggins. That's
Well,
right.
that's awesome
I forgot
because
about
that's
that.
Sergeant Major Bill Pearson.
Yeah.
But his 80s rock alter ego is Blaze Thunderfist.
That's
and
right.
I hear him yell it every now and then as
Yeah.
he's walking his dog. Just throwing it out there.
Absolutely.
You're like, that's him. There it is. But I, like we said earlier too, whatever works. We're all just trying to, do something in life. But for me, that was like, I'm Delta Charlie, And like, when you're not doing well, you can remind yourself, and words are definitely really, really powerful. So I struggle a lot when I am stressed or, in this kind of rut, is I will constantly, think negatively, or I'll speak negatively. Like, I don't want to do this. I really hate doing this. When really, those cheesy motivational affirmations like, I am, that sometimes will help, and whatever your juice is. So, but that's where the Delta Charlie Code program comes in. And so I run quite frequently. I haven't run a marathon yet. I ran a half.
March 22nd.
I know the Warrior. What
Just
is
so
it? The
happens.
Warrior?
Just so
Yeah.
happens,
We're gonna
10K,
be there
half, and a full.
regardless. Yeah.
I mean, just throwing it out there. You got plenty of time.
There it is. There it is. I am going to try to do the half.
Great.
And now it's recorded. Now I actually.
Yeah, so
I told this to Shay the other day, and I was like, now
Shay, it's happening.
on a podcast.
Put it out in the universe.
Yeah,
It's
it's
happening.
on
It's out there.
record.
It's out there in the universe.
In the midst. But another thing that I do is ice baths. So I'll cold plunge, or I don't know. I don't think it's David Goggins. I'm sure does it, but specifically his name is Wim Hof.
So my wife does the Wim Hof method. Do you do
I
the breathing
love
techniques
it.
too?
Yes,
She's
love
got the app.
it.
She
Yes.
gets to hold the breath, and she's like, "Do it
How
with
far
me."
can she go?
She used to do it for almost 2 minutes, I think.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was like first it was like 36. She's like, do this with me. I'm like, I'm trying to sleep.
Yeah.
No, like I'm not trying to kill myself to go to sleep, but I would, and it was kind of fun. But yeah, so she was like close to 2 minutes, I think, last
That's
time I checked
great.
in. Yeah.
That's great. Well,
Yeah.
you'll have to check again because I just hit 2 minutes. That'd be really cool.
Oh, yeah.
Now we can challenge each other to get to 3.
Yeah, she's all about the ice bath and the polar
Yeah.
plunge or whatever you want to call it, or the really super cold shower. God bless
Yeah.
you.
And I mean, I started when I was probably 20, 21. And I started with cold showers, which cold showers are great. And then you do them for a long enough time and you're like, okay, this isn't really that bad.
Yeah.
But throwing yourself in a bucket of ice, it's tough. Like that will get the quit out of you right away, humble you very quickly.
Oh yeah.
And on top of that, at the same time, I would listen to like motivational, like warrior mindset type deals at the same time. So I'm like 4 a.m. in the middle of the dark in my deep freezer on the side of my house. It was unplugged, by the way, when I got in. So, but it's things that work. And are they conventional? Are they super sexy all the time? No, like getting in your deep freezer from your parents' house that you took, the other day when they weren't home. I mean, does it work? Yes, but is it super, aesthetic? Not really, but
Well, Mom,
here I
Dad, we
am.
found your deep freezer.
Yeah, there it is.
Have you tried like the cryo freezes?
I haven't tried those yet. No.
So I thought
Have
they
you
were
tried 'em?
amazing. So
Yeah.
I was, how do I put this? I was trying out for an organization in the Army, and during it, I was just really beating up my body. And my buddy was like, "Hey, you got to go to those locations, do a cryo freeze," and it helped recover me like that. Now I can't. It's hard for me to do a deep freezer because those of you who can't see me, I'm built like an ogre. So me to find a deep freezer.
Troglodyte is the word we like to use.
Or
Yeah.
troglodyte is what it is. So I think for me to find a tub to get in is hard enough as it is.
Yeah.
But if you ever get the chance and you had like cover from a long run, do a cryo freeze. It's amazing.
Yeah. Well, and it is really great for, like you're saying, fitness recovery too.
Yeah.
So, like, on top of running being good for you, for your brain and all the things, like,
Yeah.
get in some cold water.
So we talk about that quite a bit. Like one of the things that we do for the Garrison, and we both have done this in our units, and my brother does it too, and a bunch of other folks, is we do monthly physical fitness, really health and holistic fitness challenges. Like today, we did a 60-minute, 25 to 30 pound, depending on which sandbag you picked up, 60-minute sandbag carry, 60 minutes, right? In your instead of bear hug, it's not on your shoulders, whatever. You're just running for 60 minutes, 30 out, 30 back. First 30 minutes, not a problem. Turn around, you come back, like, oh, geez, I got to come back. It's super dark outside. It's a little windy. It's rainy.
You're facing the wind, probably.
Yeah, well, yeah, uphill both ways. I mean, there are some uphill and downhill, but some rolling hills. But then now it's a mindset. Now it's all about how the grit, the mental resilience, the toughness, and then thrown in with some physical fitness, because your core gets engaged, and you're like, oh my God, so everything's starting to break down. And in a moment, you get some spiritualness in there, like, you're praying to whoever, like, oh my God, I'm gonna get through this, But really, like, all that health and holistic fitness, like, as you figure out what that looks like, and then the recovery piece, but all that I think is what allows people to be very successful in life. If you can manage that stress, because stress is good for you. That's it's like an obstacle, right? Or it allows you to survive in the wild. I mean, stress is okay. It's not bad. It's how you deal with it. That's the challenge, I think.
Well, and that's interesting you say that too, because I've been saying this as of recently, because life has been pretty stressful in the business world. But, you look at people who are, the big wigs or, the idols you have, things like that. But the higher up you go, the more stress you get.
Yeah.
But you look at them and you're like, they're not stressed at all. No way. No way they're stressed. But then you get up there and, like, you start reaching a new goal and a new goal and a new goal.
That's right.
And you're like, how in the world do those, like, and you point up and you're like, how do those people deal with it? The people that are, like, bigger and doing better things than I am, and not even better, but just bigger things, and they're more responsible. It's like, what? How do they deal with it?
Yeah.
How do they do it? There's no way that they're not stressed.
It's like even when I was a kid, I should say kid, young soldier, I would see sergeant majors. My God, they just sit in their ivory towers, just doing nothing.
Yeah. They're
that's
they're
all they
peering out
do.
the window, thinking.
So when I was a battalion CSM, we used to do like follow the CSM around for a couple of days, and I would
really?
follow me around for about 24 hours. Once you got through my first 3-hour meeting, can I go back to just being a private? Like, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, this is so they knew we would don't just sit in our offices all day thinking of great quotes from 4-star generals. It's like, no, our job actually is pretty stressful.
The good idea grenade comes out of the sergeant major's office. Catch this one.
Yeah.
It's amazing. But, we're all people, we're all humans, and I would wager to say that if you looked at top politician, business, athlete, the way they manage stress is probably fairly similar to what most people I would say should, but they use techniques that are out there that you and I or the average Joe, the average Derek would use, because but they've done it for longer and they've experienced it. So there's it's
like
all
that step. They're like 10 steps in. So
it's
like
experimental, right? Yeah, we're like 3 or 4, 5, 6 steps, and they're like 10, 15, right?
Yeah.
And so then, and now that step becomes harder and harder. And so how do you manage it? Hopefully, these people to the left and right of you.
That's a good question, actually. So we've been dealing with generational stuff in the military. Since you're 23, but you're also running a business, so you have a bunch of employees of the same age. I can't quote the senior leaders. I don't know if he wants me quoting them, but he said that what we have found, and I agree with him, is that this generation we've taught to not go through anything and be sheltered. And the only way to build resiliency is to go through some stuff in life. Something, whether it be, have you found that in whether it's your employees or just peers generationally, that the resiliency has gone down based on how they were raised or how the world is today?
Absolutely. 100%. It's hard because, once you have gone through, you've been in their shoes, right? So just like you're saying, when you were a young private, you've been you're looking at them now and you're like, I've been there. I know exactly what you're going through. I know it looks like I'm not really working, but I've just learned how to manage my stress. But you say that to them and they don't really understand that, right? But, how you see that, I definitely think it's a thing that makes a big effect into people and who they are. And it's interesting you say that because obviously being, close to Fort Sill, one of my shops, the amount of people I notice that are, their families in the military, their husbands in the military, they've had so much change in their life that they're rock solid. You'd think that they were prepared to not be able to change, but they've dealt with it, moved around, done different things. Like, they get it. And guess what? If you have to do a 10-hour day, they're like, bet, too easy, Yeah. But for folks who've literally, not had to really work a day in their life or experience change or do those kinds of things, 6 hours with no breaks is a long time. And you're like, well, guess what? The work doesn't stop until it's done. So if you're going to take the time.
Say that one more time for everybody, right?
The work doesn't stop till it's done,
That's right.
And that's how, that's just who I am as a person, but I also have to recognize that other people are not like that. But they're also not going to get the things that I'm going to get. So you must do you must do the things that others won't do to get what nobody else will get, or something like that. It's a quote, right? But like you're saying, the generational challenges, I definitely see it, and it's even harder because I'm a part of the generation that has the challenge. So I'm different than most of my friends and my peers.
Yeah,
and
it's great.
How do you relate to them?
Right.
I'm like, you're irritating me.
That's funny.
We're going to keep going. What do you mean?
It's about drive, it's ambition, it's purpose, you're motivated,
Yeah.
like you got a different gear. Let's say we talk with, what's her name, the big runner?
Courtney Dillwater.
Yeah, Courtney Dillwater. You get into the pain cave and you got to figure out how to get out of it and then keep going. And then
She's great, yeah.
Oh, yeah, but when people hit that pain cave, they stop. It's like Ryan Holiday. Let the obstacle be the way.
Yeah.
Well,
it's kind of like once you're tired. Like once you get past being tired for an hour.
Oh yeah.
Guess what? You're up the rest of the night.
That's it.
You're moving. You're like, okay, we're good.
Yeah. I mean, like kinetic energy is a thing. Like energy in motion tends to stay in motion, kind of thing.
That's it.
And we were doing one of those. I guess it was many moons ago, about 10, 11 years ago. We did the unit I was in had a senior leader marriage retreat, which was great because, folks have been married for 10, 15 years. Your problems are way different than someone who just got married as like a young 20-year-old when you're like 35,
why don't you
40.
take the trash out?
Right.
Like, whatever.
Different challenges.
Their first year of marriage are laughable.
Yeah. Different challenges, right? You're like, oh, that's funny. I remember when I was a child, right?
Yeah.
But so one of them, the chaplain said, hey, if your spouse, because they're talking to the spouse, if your soldier was a vehicle, what would they be? People are like, oh, my soldier would be a Corvette, mine would be a Porsche. My wife raised her hand. I'm like, oh my God, this is not going to be good.
And she used Camry on it.
Oh wow, well, I would take that. She's like, my husband, Derek, is a front end or a bulldozer. I was like, what? It's like,
come again?
I'm like looking around. I'm like, what do you mean? And she's like, no, seriously, you're a bulldozer. I'm like, oh my God. But the way she said it was great. It goes back to the obstacles the way. She's like, if you're a bulldozer, you can either pave a road, you can make a plot of land, you can make something that's very useful, you can do these things, but when something gets in your way, you're going to make a road around it, under it, over it, or you're just going to drop the front end loader and go through it. I'm like, oh, I am a bulldozer. Like, that is me. But it goes back to having the resiliency or the wherewithal and the experience to figure out when there's an obstacle, what do? We don't stop. You got to figure out how to get around it, through it, over it, under it, or drop a front end loader and go right through it and just smash it.
Yeah.
And just be a blunt force instrument. Not always a good thing to do, right? When we were younger, that might have happened a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Every problem was a nail near the hammer, but then you realize there are other instruments to do these things. And so it goes back to what you were saying, right? Like, hey, I started this journey at the age of 17, right? You know, and now you're Miss Oklahoma, USA, and much different person when you start off with, I think, yeah?
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because, like, you're visually, right, bulldozer makes a lot of sense, but even then, now you just created a path for everybody behind you. And so,
that's right. Yeah.
And being a leader, you know, you have to be able to create the path and be okay with being the, quote, bulldozer, which can be deemed as negative, but it's like, who's going to do it?
Yeah, and bulldozers are useful.
Yeah.
That's my,
Gets
my going in term there.
Gets it done.
I'm going to ask Tamara tonight. She'll be your donkey.
Yeah.
I would agree with Tamara.
Yeah. That's fair.
I mean, we saw one today. You're over there hanging out.
We sided with the ladies.
No, it's good. It's good. So, so what is as we close this out, for you, Danika, we got some good listeners here, and I know you got some folks that follow you around. Oh, that sounds weird, but you know what I mean.
Stalkers.
Yeah, some weird stuff.
Yeah,
but no, but
blink twice.
Folks that listen, for the folks that you're in your organization, or folks that what's the message that you would like to send to folks that says, hey, you can do this too, or what do you want people to know that will help them out as they start a new journey to be better, or to do something they've never done, and they want to reach out and grab this goal? What would you tell them?
You know, aside from what I've mentioned in the podcast, I think realizing that the good stuff goes down, the bad stuff goes up. So just because from a perspective of, you know, a lesser ranking, you don't see that your leader is struggling, that doesn't mean that what they're doing is not hard, right? They're giving you the good stuff as a leader should. The bad stuff doesn't need to come down, right? The issues that you're dealing with, all your problems, things like that, you might have an issue that they need to fix, but are you going to tell them about your issues and how, you know, your leader is doing this and that and whatever, right? You're not going to send that stuff down because it's obviously going to create some challenges and issues. But the good stuff is what goes down. The bad stuff is what goes up. So when you're looking at the person that's in charge of you, whether it's at work or, you know, in life, things like that, I mean, just because it looks like they've got it all together, they probably don't. And it is hard, you know, and to get to a spot of success or value or whatever you want to do in life, it's going to be hard, you know, and you have to be able to get yourself through it to, you know that that's going to be possible for you. And really, it's cheesy and everybody says it, but anything is possible, right? How do you get there? Now, be realistic with yourself. If you're, you know, like in pageants, for example, there's a year age limit cutoff, right? Or there used to be. And so if you know that you've only got 2 years left, you know, if you're trying to go be Miss Universe, I mean, you can do it in a year. So if you have 2 years, you could go do it, you know? But I think knowing that you can achieve anything and that the good stuff is always going to come down. So when you get up there, too, know that once you get to that position, it's not always going to be handy-dandy. But the reason it looked handy-dandy and fun and fine is because you had a good leader, right? Because imagine what's crazy, I've had people tell me this, you know, as a business owner or manager, you know, well, we just don't feel like we can connect to you, or we don't have a relationship, or I don't feel like I know you, and stuff like that. And it's like, well, you know, the stuff about my life and what I'm dealing with, you don't want to know, you know? And I hate the question of how are you, too. So it's like, even then they're like, oh, well, how are you doing? Because, of course, you check in with your team, make sure that the leaders are doing what they're supposed to. And they're like, well, how are you? Do not ask me that question, right? Because it's like, do you want to...
Good, now I know what to ask next time.
There it is. Yeah, well, it's like, do you really want to know what it is? I counted it the other day, and, you know, with business, it's tough, you know, finances and all that. But, you know, it's always when you're going through the hardest time that when people ask you, how are you doing? It just is another reminder of where you're at, you know? And it's like, it's trashy. I don't like it. Don't ask me how I'm doing, because I'm probably doing bad.
No, but you know what?
But I'm managing, you know? So it's like, because you look so smiley and happy and you're having a fun time. It's like, I'm just dealing with stuff, you know? It's life.
Yeah, it's a different persona you got to project, right? And then you can dream something, you can do it, but I love dreamers. but you got to plan and execute to execute that dream. Like people can dream big, but you got to do something about it.
Yeah.
Don't fall flat on your dream. Do something about it. And those dreams aren't a straight shot. It's meandering. Yes, life's gonna get you. Life ain't fair.
Something's gonna throw you. Life is not fair. That's
life
right.
sucks. Buy a helmet. That's what that's one of
Candace Owens.
Yeah,
that's
there
Life
it
sucks.
is.
Buy a
There it
helmet.
is.
Like this is it's a meandering cycle, and you just got to figure out. Here's a pathway, and I'm gonna meander through this pathway. I'm gonna be back on it for a little bit. I'm gonna hit left. I'm gonna go right. I'm gonna do whatever.
Yeah.
But I'm still moving forward on the pathway. Just be meandering.
That's right.
All right, sorry, Major. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, how do I top that?
I know, right?
I mean, yeah, life.
Mic drop.
It's knowing that life is going to come your way. Like we've talked about it before. I don't know if we talked on the podcast. Like my goal is to do a 100-miler. My wife is probably tired of me watching Courtney Dowater documentaries because she's my running idol. But even when I was getting there, I broke my foot. Then I got back at it. This last time in Paris 50K, I got to like mile 20. I called him up, but I just broke my foot again.
Oh man.
I'm gonna walk back to mile 26.
To be fair, I was not sympathetic at all. I'm like, yeah, it sounds like you're a giant baby. You should finish out. You know, as a good as a good partner.
Well, and really.
That's all about resilience. Do better. No, it was, yeah.
So we'll see how this year goes. We're back to Paris 50K.
Yeah.
So.
That's great. That's really cool. In Paris.
Paris, Texas.
Okay, I was like, you're going to Paris.
Yeah, Paris.
Paris, Texas.
Under the Eiffel Tower. It's kind of like Miami.
They do have a small Eiffel Tower there.
There is a small Eiffel Tower in Paris, Texas.
Miami, Oklahoma.
It's kind of what y'all said is, I say this a lot because we've all been around. We've all had some challenges. Don't let, and I'll tell this for anybody out there listening, don't let anybody else define your worth. That's on you to define.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Like you want the feedback, you want this, but who you are is on you.
Yeah.
You want to, again, the naysayers, not saying naysayers like people give you constructive feedback because there's some good feedback out there, but you are who you are because of you, not anybody else. You define your worth. And we've all had challenges, but I would tell you about 4 or 5 years ago, that really hit me hard when I was like, oh, and you hit a stop and you're like, oh, and like, who defines my worth? Me.
Yeah.
And then now it's like, okay, now how do I get over this hump? And now you start to excel again. And so I would offer that up as a mental resilience technique is write it down. You define your worth. Nobody else does.
And once you decide it, own it.
That's
so if
it.
you're going to choose to like have a shaved head, do the things like
Yeah.
cut bangs or like pierce your ears, own it. Stop
Be
being,
Blaze
don't be
Thunderfist.
insecure.
Be Blaze Thunderfist, the 80s rock star.
Embrace it.
We don't stop.
Yeah.
Don't stop.
Never
Blaze
ever.
Thunderfist. That might come back out on social media. I can't wait. This would be really great.
That
so,
was fun.
all right. Well, for everybody out there, really appreciate it. Danika, thank you very much for taking your time out to talk with us today, and for everybody out there in the virtual space, listening to us as we, wax poetic about leadership and mental resilience and whatnot. I don't remember what our next podcast is going to be like, but I know in April, in a couple months from now, my identical twin brother will be online with us, and we're going to do me, him, and Sergeant Major Pearson. I don't know. We're not even gonna have a script. We're
Y'all look alike, but do you sound alike?
We
Not only that, it's weird. They have like the
so
same
they do.
mannerisms and everything. It's,
this one we might have to record.
Yeah, you're like rubbing your eyes.
Yeah,
Who is that?
Who's doing this?
Is it a glitch?
And
That
maybe
would be
we should
fun.
just like switch outfits.
Yeah. So you guys listening, it'll just be Colonel Bear. It'll feel like Colonel Bear just talking the whole
talking
hour.
to himself.
It's
Yeah.
it. Well, with Sergeant Major Pearson with injecting,
that's
but
right.
no scripts. It's gonna be a ton of fun. Who knows how long that's gonna be? So tune into that. But so hopefully the next month will be great.
Be a Joe Rogan style. 3 hours.
Excellent, right? 3 hours of awesomeness, right?
On 1.5 speed.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There you go. There you go. All right. Well, hey, thanks, y'all. I really appreciate it. And thanks a lot.